Welcome, welcome. I see a lot of people have already rolled into the space. That's good to see. I'm glad to know you're all excited for our community call today. As is evident in the title, our community call today is about our legendary technology that we've been teasing all month. So, to give you guys some background, on May the 4th, Boss demoed what many people thought was impossible, and in fact, it didn't make any sense, which was the first bridgeless crypto transaction from one chain to another. After we performed this, we received many questions about the technology behind it, and we promised you all that we'd release the full white paper explaining this technology on Bitcoin Pizza Day, May 22nd. Well, May 22nd was yesterday, and on Bitcoin Pizza Day, we released the technology that allowed for this legendary set of transactions. This technology is called Charms. Charms is the first programmable portable asset protocol on Bitcoin. It allows for not just one, but two incredible innovations for Bitcoin. One, it brings lots more programmability to Bitcoin than we ever thought imaginable on the main Bitcoin blockchain. And number two, it allows for us to move assets between chains without requiring wrappers or bridges as you've conventionally conceived of them. So I'm sure many of you have questions about how this could possibly be real. We published the white paper yesterday. It has a lot of the answers that you need for that. But today we have Ivan Mikushin, the lead developer behind Charms, to answer all of your questions related to the tech here. Ivan, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Hey, so I'm Ivan, and I have built Charms, and yeah, so I've been in the blockchain space not that long ago, not the OG, definitely. So I joined, and actually, I started working in blockchain or like looking into blockchain in 2021, beginning with Cardano, and that was. Why I started with Cardano was because I was interested in functional programming and big fan of functional programming, and it also like the UTXO model of Cardano appealed to me much more than this globally mutable system of say EVM chains. Um, so uh, and then I wanted to build something that would be useful to Cardano users, to developers on Cardano, uh, and that's how I got interested in ZK technology, because what I wanted to build was um, a SDK for side chains, which I thought uh, would be best if state from the side chain, or from the rollup was the correct term actually, um, would be uh, would be put on the main chain trustlessly. So so I learned by the end of year 2023 that okay, so zero knowledge proofs is the right technology for this to happen. Cardano then didn't have the tools to verify zero knowledge proofs. So I decided, okay, if uh, I can learn how to do this on Bitcoin, then I can definitely bring it back to Cardano. So that's basically the reasoning behind how what started me on the way to work on Charms. And then somewhere in 2024, we did a project called ZK Bitcoin, which looked very different from what we have now with Charms, but it allowed zero knowledge proofs to be verified, and then based on the verification of zero knowledge proof in a transaction, that transaction would be included. But it required a set of validators, blah blah blah. So it wasn't really that interesting. Um, but then uh, we started talking with Yago, uh, who is the founder of BitcoinOS, and um, basically he challenged me to develop a token standard for programmable tokens on Bitcoin, kind of like runes and ordinals, but programmable. Is that even possible? And I thought, by that time, I did have an idea of how to create a ledger that would do exactly that, actually. But I didn't have any clue about runes or ordinals back then. So I started looking into it, and we quickly realized that, hey, not only is it possible, it's also possible to create a token technology that would work on top of any UTXO chains. So that's in a nutshell what Charms is. Charms is the programmable and portable asset technology for Bitcoin and beyond.
Excellent intro, Ivan. There's a lot to touch on what you just said, and I have a lot of questions lined up from the Discord related to many of the things that you just mentioned. So you mentioned wanting to build directly on top of Bitcoin. So this is the question I'm going to ask first. Somebody asks on page 6, the white paper mentions, quote, the abstract nature of the Charms ledger designed to be a layer on top of a UTXO ledger, unquote. Where is the Charms ledger? Is it maintained by archive nodes? Is Charms an L2?
Great question. So Charms is indeed a ledger. Uh, what is a ledger? A ledger is a system of records that kind of uh, allows you to see transactions, right? Allows you to see what gets transferred from one account to another account. Well, in a UTXO model, nothing gets transferred. You have outputs, and you spend these outputs, and you create other outputs. So a ledger is a set of rules that governs how the value from spent outputs gets transferred to created outputs. So you could talk about them as token preservation rules. So charms could be looked at as this abstract ledger. Why abstract? It's because the concrete one is Bitcoin itself, right? Or Cardano, or any other supported UTXO chain when we had supported it. What Charms adds is metadata to these transactions that assign these magical tokens um, to outputs of the underlying transaction. So in that sense, Charms is a ledger. It's a set of rules. It's enforced by the Charms client. And the Charms client, it could be the Charms CLI. It could be a library included in the wallet. And in fact, we have started working with wallets to support this, but there's no additional nodes that are required. So the only thing required to see the ledger kind of through these goggles, if you use the Charms client, it's kind of like a goggles that you can look at transactions and can see the additional assets that are Charms. But yeah, you don't need any indexer nodes or any additional data availability layer. Everything is on the underlying blockchain.
Great answer, Ivan. I think this can bounce into a related question, which is just how does Charms, say, relate to other meta protocols that have already been built upon Bitcoin? So I've heard other meta protocols in the past. They've been described as, say, a lens or like a set of goggles through which you see the chain, but they still operate, say, on that base chain. They're not exactly an L2. But I do know that some of these other protocols still rely on some off-chain infrastructure in order to work, even if it's not, say, a separate ledger. So for Charms, just how much off-chain infrastructure do you need in practice in order to make this work?
Well, for say a wallet to be able to show you tokens, really the wallet somehow needs to get the token metadata, meaning the picture, like the logo, maybe the URL of the project for the token, maybe the ticker, all that stuff. That stuff can be recorded in an NFT, which the Cardano community is probably familiar with SIP68. And we in Charms use a very similar approach. So we don't have SIPs, we have CIPs, Charms Improvement Proposals, and the first one is called SIP 420. Well, it defines the token metadata for Charms. So these NFTs, they obviously can be anywhere on the blockchain, so they can live at whatever address. So you could perhaps send such an NFT to an unspendable Taproot address, and it'll live there forever. But to know where they are, obviously you have to have some sort of an indexer. So we do the same thing basically as Cardano does with SIP68 here. But for say consistency to enforce transactions, you don't need any indexer. So why is that? So if we look at the transaction from the point of view of the Charms client, you will see metadata and you will see a zero knowledge proof in the transaction, and that zero knowledge proof attests to two statements. First statement is the transaction is correct from the point of view of any involved Charms apps, which every token is a Charms app, essentially. And the second statement is that all previous transactions, or these transactions that we are spending outputs of, they have correct proofs and spells in them. Or maybe they don't, and they don't have they don't produce charms. We can spend an empty charms output, so it might have sats, but it doesn't have any charms in it. That's also fine. Anyway, so we can look at that transaction and we can immediately see if it's valid. So we see that, okay, double spending is being prevented for us by the underlying blockchain, be it Bitcoin or Cardano. Totally prevents double spending. And the only thing that left is basically to see if our magical assets or charms are correctly spent and recreated in outputs. So these are this is the logic of the spell, right? And that is proven by the zero knowledge proof. So yeah, you only need
That's
to look
fantastic.
at the transaction once, and you know everything there is to know about this transaction. You don't need to consult an indexer.
Yeah, that's fantastic to know. That is a critical difference that Charms has from, say, other Bitcoin meta protocols. It's something that I had to educate myself on a little bit. That was blowing my mind as well. So basically, other Bitcoin meta protocols, in order to function practically and in order to kind of coordinate everybody around a common standard, everybody really needs to follow the rules of just like one or two indexers. That's kind of define who owns what and like what, say with ordinals, like what Satoshi represents what NFT, et cetera, et cetera. But with Charms, all of the ownership and all of the tracking and the transaction history, all of this stuff is posted on chain through ZK proofs, and it makes the practice of actually using Charms in a truly trustless manner a lot more lightweight. So all you really need is, say, a Bitcoin client and a lightweight Charms client in order to make this work for you. So, Ivan, I'm going to give you a bit of a break now. I'm going to answer a couple of questions that are not so technical, but are related to Charms. One is related to the Boss token, and one is related to XBTC. So, for context, folks, XBTC is Boss's version of BTC that's been wrapped into a Charms token. And once wrapped into a Charms token, it can be beamed around to other blockchains without a bridge. We're going to dig into that more in a little bit. But we got a question yesterday based on an announcement. Somebody said, any correlation between OKX's XBTC announcement and Charms? So OKX put out an announcement yesterday. It involved, I think, it might have been like Solana or something, but OKX is basically going to serve as a custodian for locking up BTC and then bridging it over to another blockchain. Or yes, so they said XBTC unlocks new alternative for BTC holders across Solana, Sui Network, and Aptos. Full disclosure, folks, that is not us. That is not our XBTC. That is something completely different. And it is something that is completely custodial and centralized, which is not what we're going for. Boss's core product that we're trying to introduce to people is a wrapped version of BTC that doesn't rely on extreme centralized trust, and that brings those trust assumptions down to an absolute minimum, so that you can continue to use your Bitcoin in a decentralized way while getting all of the programmable features of other blockchains. So OKX, Charms, not working with each other, at least not yet. Second question, somebody asks, you guys said Boss token would launch on both EVM and Cardano, but you said Boss will initially only be functional on UTXO chains. So how will it be available on EVM at TGE? So that's a great question. The answer is that when we do TGE, and the exact date hasn't been pinpointed yet for TGE, but when we go to that, the Boss token that people receive won't be the like true functional version of Boss token quite yet. So what people will receive initially is a kind of voucher token or like an IOU that will be redeemable one-to-one for the actual Boss token once it goes live. These IOUs will be making available across many chains, including as an ERC20 token across EVM chains, and also as just a native CNT, say, on Cardano. We're doing this to make sure that people on all chains have the availability early on to begin transacting and trading with Boss token, and to create some liquidity around it, and to make sure it's tradable on exchanges, many of which use the ERC20 token standard already. That being said, the actual Boss token will exist, as we said, as a charm. And a charm is a token that natively exists between UTXO chains without the need for bridging or wrapping, like say when moving between those chains, and it maintains its logic when it's moving between all of those chains. So that's exactly how that works. So there's a bit of a distinction there. There's the initial voucher token, which is an IOU, and that's what, say, EVM users will be able to receive early on. But the actual Boss token will exist as a charm, and charms will first be compatible with UTXO chains. Now, that leads me into my next question, which, Ivan, I think you're best equipped to answer. Somebody asks, do charms require that the supporting blockchain have certain UTXO features? Are they restricted to Cardano, or could they theoretically be used on another UTXO-based blockchain, like the X chain of Avalanche?
That's an excellent question. So, uh, the only thing that charms require from a UTXO blockchain is ability to store additional data in a transaction. So we are very lucky to have such ability with Bitcoin in the form of Taproot, which is also used by ordinals and runes. And well, basically, we have been inspired with ordinals to do this. Um, so a spell with a proof in a Charms transaction, it looks very much similar to an inscription that ordinals do. Cardano, for example, allows you to put additional data in any transaction output. So, and we utilize that in exactly this way in our demo. Uh, so, if I haven't looked personally into the X chain of Avalanche, but if it does allow to store additional data in a transaction, and we don't really need much. We only need like a few hundred bytes to do this, depending on content of, say, NFTs that we host in in a charm. So yeah, so if X-Chain allows storing these additional a few hundred bytes, or maybe up to a couple kilobytes, maybe, then certainly, absolutely, we can port charms to X-Chain. And we in fact do have plans we're looking into porting charms to, definitely, to Litecoin and Dogecoin as well, precisely because of that. So Doge has ordinals, so that means that there are inscriptions. So therefore, charms is coming.
I've been dropping the alpha for all of you guys already. Okay, charms coming to the other UTXO bros, including Litecoin and Dogecoin, but Bitcoin and Cardano first. That's what we know so far. So guys, at this point, I would like to start welcoming some of you to the stage so that you can start asking your own questions to Ivan about charms. I'm sure you have many. In the meantime, give me 1 second. I have your special Discord code that Claire normally shares with you. That code for this call is I put a spell on you. The code is I put a spell on you. You guys should know what to do with that. I'm assuming it's some kind of Zeely task or something. But the secret code of today's call is I put a spell on you. Okay, so guys, feel free to start requesting to come to the stage. In the meantime, Ivan, I'd like to ask a question as a follow-up to what you just mentioned. So you said that the thing that makes charms work with UTXO chains is the ability to store extra data into a transaction.
Yes.
What does this imply for the ability to bring charms to, say, non-UTXO chains? Now, I know from having worked with you on the white paper that when it comes to writing or creating a charms transaction, you write metadata into the witness data of a transaction. We call this casting a spell on the transaction. But then what the spell does is it assigns the UTXOs within that transaction with certain tokens. How might this work if this were to be migrated to an account-based system, if we were to do this at all, if this were possible?
Well, systems like EVM-based chains, well, they basically allow pretty much arbitrary programmability on the EVM chain, on an EVM chain. So, say ERC20 tokens, they're basically mappings of from addresses to balances, right? And their ERC20 tokens are a programmatic construct, not the native token of say Ethereum. This means that charms are definitely possible to have on an EVM chain, although it will be a completely new token standard. So charms can probably with very minimal overhead be implemented on Ethereum, for example, or any other EVM chain. But it's going to be its own token standard. So it's going to be a synthetic UTXO. Yeah, we can with charms we can bring UTXO to EVM. Why not? Same goes for something like Sui. So they have this hybrid model where they don't really have UTXOs, but they also don't really have accounts. They have objects. And again, it's an arbitrary programmability. Like you can do pretty much anything. And again, a charms model there would be like very implementable on such chains as well. It's just it's going to introduce a new token standard into these chains. Uh, it's certainly possible.
That is pretty incredible. I would like to pivot back to talking a bit more about one of the UTXO chains we're focused on. So obviously, after Bitcoin, we've said that the first chain that we're coming to with Charms after Bitcoin is going to be Cardano. Now, when we did our first demo transaction earlier this month, some knowledgeable developers reviewed the transaction and realized that they couldn't quite see the transaction when they used a Cardano block explorer, or they could see hints of something going on when they looked at the transaction data, but they didn't see like any CNTs involved. And so this was a bit of a concern to them. How might you address this concern, Ivan?
Sure. Yeah. So the Charm software with which you could look at that transaction and see the spell in that transaction, yeah, it's not released yet. But you can definitely, when it is, you can definitely look at these transactions and see that indeed we have spells in these transactions, and they are correct because they also carry the proofs. Um, so um, so yeah, you'd have to use the Charms client for that. These spells are recorded in that additional datum in the change output of these transactions in each and every one of them, and using the Charms client, it's very much possible to see what's going on.
All right, I'd love to continue asking my own questions, but we do have a speaker who's decided to come up. Take profit. I see a nice orange pill in your bio. I respect that as a historic Bitcoin maxi myself. The floor is yours. What do you have to ask?
GM, everybody.
GM.
GM.
Yeah, I'm actually very happy for this day. After celebrating the advent of Bitcoin yesterday, and we're having something beautiful coming to the Bitcoin space. This is worth a celebration, and I can't wait to be one of the first people to use Charms. Yeah,
That's awesome.
my question. Yeah, I have two questions, and one of them has been answered. So I wouldn't want to take much of our time, which was how we'll be able to implement the EVM chain right on Charms. So which has been answered actually, because you made mention of Sui the other time. Now the Sui and the Solana, I think they've come together, and I think they have a single platform where you can trade Sui on the Solana chain. So we are looking forward to such having an EVM chain and all other chains on Charms. So I read on the white paper that Charms would later be coming like a DApp, whereby there would be peer-to-peer transactions. I want to know if there is a plan or a time zone whereby we are going to have this in implementation on Charms. And then lastly is I want to know if Bitcoin OS are they the one um how do I put it? Like championing the Charms, or Charms is a protocol on its own, whereby those that are in charge of it are solely they are independent of all other protocols like the Bitcoin OS and Cardano and all. So I want to know that. Thank you very much.
Sure. Yeah, I'll answer the last question first. So Charms is a protocol that is developed by a separate entity, Charms, Charms Inc. Uh, and it's developed in close collaboration with BitcoinOS. Um, so and essentially Charms is a layer in the Bitcoin OS stack. If we look at Bitcoin OS as an operating system for the Internet of Value, Charms is the protocol layer for that operating system. The first question, though, is I didn't quite get the question. So could you repeat the first one?
No, I said the first question has been answered. I was talking about integrating the EVM chain on Charm,
Oh yeah,
so which you
yeah.
already answered. Like it's going to come probably later in the future.
But
So
there was another question. Maybe that
yeah,
was
yeah.
the
The
second one.
second one you talked about the DApp, like having the Charm as a DApp, whereby there would be P2P, whereby you can meet a client, when you buy, for example, um from Bitcoin, you buy to the Charms UTXO chain. So you want to have a P2P, like you want to sell what you have to get your denomination in your country, like a P2P. I read it on the white paper.
Okay, mm, are you saying that is it Charms is going to be like a dApp on Cardano? I would say that with Charms, it will be possible to create dApps on both Cardano and Bitcoin. Um, well, if we look at every token, every token created with Charms is essentially a dApp on its own. Actually, every token on Cardano is a dApp because every token on Cardano has a token policy, which is a program. And if a transaction that wants to mint or burn tokens, say on Cardano, meets certain conditions uh, written down in the token policy, the token policy evaluates the transaction. If it does meet these conditions, it's a program, and it decides yes or no. Can we mint or burn this amount of the token? Charms works exactly the same way. So only the program is written in Rust rather than say Plutus or Aiken. But also Charms can be used to create dApps on Cardano for sure, and probably on Bitcoin as well. Um, and like how would that work? So a Charms output is basically a collection of charms of these assets, and they could be fungible tokens, non-fungible tokens, or um, fragments of state related to this particular output. And this way, these fragments of state or these pieces of data, they actually kind of bind these tokens together. So if we simply transfer tokens and we don't spend outputs with such pieces of arbitrary application data, then we don't really need the to evaluate this transaction against this app, right? Because token preservation rules um, basically say that, okay, if we have only let's say a fungible token, and there's equal amount in the all of the inputs of the transaction and all of the outputs of the transaction, exactly the same amount of this token, then what's the need to consult the token policy, right? It's just let it through, right? So but then if say a token is in an output in a UTXO with some application state, uh, like what does it mean that this if the transaction goes through, right? So like that application state could be, for example, a definition of a limit order. Um, so and if we have a few of these in a transaction, then what effectively happens is that uh, the transaction must satisfy the rules in this say a DEX as an application, right? And if it does, then it goes through. If it doesn't, then it can't. So that's what I mean.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's what I
yeah.
mean when I say that dApps can be created with charms. Um,
All right, that's nice. And lastly, is there a possibility of having airdrop on charms later on? Lastly,
yeah, so charms is not a token itself, right? Tokens though can be created with charms. So charms is token technology. Charms is not a token on its own. Um,
yeah.
yeah, so we will create tokens, and people will create tokens with charms, for sure. So and for those tokens, I have no doubt there will be airdrops.
Okay, thank you.
Folks, I just want to remind you all that we've got about 15 to 20 minutes left in this space. You are welcome to come to the stage and ask some questions. We just released a big white paper yesterday. We brought programmability to Bitcoin. We brought bridgeless bridging to Bitcoin. There's so much going on, and I'm sure you guys have a lot of questions on your mind. So please don't be shy. Come up, ask what you got to ask. Ivan, something I want to ask you, since we've been digging so much into the technical weeds this whole call, is what does this mean for users? What kind of applications can we now expect to be able to unlock on Bitcoin, the ledger? And what kind of applications can we expect now for BTC as an asset thanks to Charms? What are some of our ideas here?
Oh, there's so much we can now do. Well, I mentioned a peer-to-peer DEX. Well, I'm not exactly sure that we can have this running right now on Bitcoin with Charms, but perhaps in the near future, we will. And certainly, if we will, we'll let you guys know immediately. So, but what can be done though is that with Cardano support. One thing actually we didn't mention on this call, and I think that's an omission, but let me clear that up. Charms, when transferred to Cardano, are going to be represented by Cardano native tokens. So any Charms asset, be it fungible or non-fungible token, will be a native Cardano asset. So a Cardano, a CNT. So what does that mean? That means, first of all, that any tokens created with Charms are going to be immediately tradable or usable in any DEX or any other kind of dApp available on Cardano. Like that's point one here. Second point is that as the previous speaker asked about, you're able to create dApps with Charms. So you'll be able to to create some Rust code to encode these app contracts and build these dexes and other kinds of dApps, not just in Plutus or Aiken, but in starting with Rust, but later this year probably in any programming language compilable to WebAssembly. And yeah, so actually forgot what was the question, Andrew.
I was asking what kind of use cases are going to
Oh
be
yeah,
coming to
yes,
Bitcoin.
yeah. So yeah, I'm so fascinated with like programmability itself, but that I forget about use cases. Shame on me. So yeah, so use cases are huge. You can have say a peer-to-peer exchange for Bitcoin, right? You can say have a fiat on ramp with zero knowledge, right? So like you can use, you can verify uh, programmatically, you can verify that the payment was made through something like a Cash App, for example, or a Venmo, and you can enable people to buy Bitcoin or ADA. Like that's one of the first things that pops into my mind. But there are also like NFTs. You can have tokens controlled by an NFT. You can have NFTs controlling dApps, for example, and say an NFT can signify an ownership of a on-chain business and control a revenue stream for that business. And say you transfer the NFT and you transfer the rights to the revenue stream. So I'm sure there's tremendous creative capability that can be unlocked with Charms.
There are so many use cases that Charms unlocks. We listed in the white paper about 3 incredible use cases that Charms can usher in potentially that on their own should already make for monumental announcements. So we mentioned that we can have Unchained to Bitcoin. We mentioned that, as you just mentioned, like a decentralized Bitcoin on-ramp potentially finally overcoming a problem that's plagued Bitcoin and its centralization for 15 years. There might be a way to onboard Bitcoin potentially without centralized exchanges in the digital realm. We haven't fully explored it yet, but it's looking like it could really be possible. And a third thing is we could possibly even have self-auditing stablecoins where it can interact with information from the outside world, verify somebody's Cash App account, see what the reserves are there, and then like only be able to mint more of a stable coin depending on how much is in the Cash App account. So everybody can see what the reserves are on chain instead of maybe trusting some trusted intermediary like a Big Four auditor or something. So there's so much here. I would love to keep digging into it, but we've got some other speakers up. Java, what question do you have, my guy? Happy Pizza Day.
Yo, jam, guys. Where I am right now is a bit noisy, but I don't know if I'm audible. If you can hear me clearly.
I can hear you clearly. There's a bit of noise in the background, but we can hear you.
Yeah, that's perfect, man. It's been an amazing AMA, space. I've been listening right from the beginning, man. And I must say that the project Charms is really building something that is relevant in crypto. Something we need, something that has utility. We're sick of memes, so let's go back to utility. Anyway, to make it short, I have 2 questions. First of all, it has to do with like how the scalability, how Charms kind of ensures security without bridges when there are chains on Bitcoin and Cardano, because of the cross chain. So how do you scale that? And also, secondly, it relates to the first question, with like how do you handle like smart assets into like the Bitcoin UTXOs, and are there any limitations on the transaction size? So all this boils down to scalability and transaction fees. If you could give me insight on that, I would appreciate that. Thank you.
So for those who couldn't maybe quite hear that clearly, as we know there was some noise in the background, but it was about 3 questions in there. One was, how on earth does bridgeless bridging work from Bitcoin to Cardano? The other one was, how can smart or programmable assets live on Bitcoin through Charms? And a third one is, how does this affect, say, transaction size and scalability of Charms transactions compared to, say, ordinary Bitcoin transactions? Ivan, take the stage.
Sure. I'll answer first from the perspective of how assets can live in a Bitcoin transaction. Well, that's the whole point of the Meta protocol. So we discovered that well, first of all, thanks to ordinals, I think the scheme is pretty genius. That you can actually include a pretty unlimited amount of data like unlimited, logically unlimited. It's limited by the number of bytes in the block, but a transaction could potentially occupy the whole block. So in that case, in that sense, it's unlimited. So anyway, Ordinal discovered how to make this work. It works due to Taproot, basically. And well, since we can store data in a transaction, then we can probably ascribe metadata to the transaction. And with charms, that metadata is the tokens, right? So we assign each output with a number of additional tokens. Basically, that's what we do. So with the limits to the transaction size on Bitcoin, basically, you can have a transaction as large as the block itself. So in Bitcoin, transaction sizes are measured in virtual bytes. So a virtual byte is equals to 1 byte if we are talking about a byte inside a transaction itself. But as for this metadata, we store the metadata in the witness of the transaction. So it doesn't count towards actual real bytes. So 4 bytes of witness data equals to 1 virtual byte. So the block size is 1 million virtual bytes. And so I guess the upper limit of that transaction size is about 4 megabytes then. But that is actually not possible because to have to have witness data, you have to have actual data in a transaction. So it's never reachable. But anyway, you wouldn't probably want to store that much because, if we say a virtual byte costs like 2 satoshis, that would mean what 8 million satoshis. That's a lot of Bitcoin to pay for a transaction. So on Cardano, though, I think the sizes are much tighter. So and a transaction can probably not be larger than 16 kilobytes, I think. And the whole thing with all the witness and everything. So with that, it does have enough space for additional assets in the form of charms. As I said, we only require a few hundred bytes in the minimum. So that would probably be about 800. So yeah, there's room to grow the transaction size from there. And I think the last question that's unanswered right now is how on earth is it possible to have bridgeless bridging? Well, so we actually were shocked ourselves to discover that this is even possible. Because initially the idea was to come up with a programmable asset standard for Bitcoin itself. Right, so by the time we started on charms, ordinals and runes were already a very established thing. It was just last summer last year, and I only started working on charms like really fully focused, heads down, since end of September last year. So the idea was just to bring programmability and create maybe a little bit more unified token standard for programmable assets on Bitcoin. But we discovered that actually, if we design it carefully and we make matters, we separate concerns of the underlying transaction and these added assets, and we did. So what we actually could achieve is that because we use zero-knowledge proofs to kind of ensure consistency of what's going on inside a transaction, and we carefully avoid looking at the transaction history because it's a combination of three different things, I think. So one is client-side validation. We don't require any additional nodes because everyone can look at Bitcoin transactions or under any other UTXO blockchain transactions. Second, it's recursive zero-knowledge proofs that anyone who can look at these transactions, meaning, well, pretty much everyone, can look at a transaction and immediately see if it's correct, right? So if the spell in the transaction is correct. So and now combining these two, we can say, okay, now why don't we actually um, mark an output of this transaction as beamed to a different chain? So if we do that, then the proof inside, or the spell and the proof in this transaction will basically tell everyone that, hey, this output here, now it only contains underlying sats in it and no charms, because they are now gone to a different chain. And we put a hash of a destination UTXO, which is on a different chain. And then on the destination chain, we'll have to have created that UTXO first, right? Because how do we spend it otherwise, right? We still need to create a UTXO transaction. So we'll have to have that created beforehand. So now we are spending that UTXO, and what we can do is we can provide the beaming transaction in its entirety with the spell and everything to the prover that constructs the proof for the spending transaction, right? What we just need to do is we simply need to provide additional data. We need to provide inclusion proof of the beaming transaction in the source blockchain, and the proof that that the block that that transaction is included in is in the main chain. So it means that for Bitcoin, it's just enough work was produced on top to produce blocks on top of that block. That's as simple as that. For Cardano, it looks obviously a little different because Cardano uses a different consensus mechanism, but it's very, very similar. Because in Cardano, at the end of the day, you can construct a client that will formally verify that a transaction was included. So because of this fact, we are able to avoid traditional bridging pitfalls, meaning there are no assets locked on the source blockchain. The assets are simply marked as transferred elsewhere, and so you can't spend them. So with bridges, obviously, if there's a contract that locks actual assets, if the contract has a bug, then you can unlock them and therefore spend them. So here it's not the case. And yeah, that's how we do it.
Java, I hope that answered all of your questions around transaction sizes and bridging.
Yeah, yeah, that was a really insightful one. I even learned about how Charms goes through the transaction to reduce the costs in general. So just to my closing question. Uh, First of all, like there was a code that was given when I entered the space, but I didn't really get what that code was for. I think it was for a giveaway or something, and I would like to know how I could participate in that. And secondly, for Charms, I'm really interested in your project. I might have just a few skill in the crypto industry, but I would like to see how I could contribute, to the ecosystem in general. I'm from Nigeria, Africa, so I think for global adoption, we should kind of keep in touch. I have a community of my own, on Telegram, if that's okay. Thank you very much.
So Java, for both of those questions, I think it's best to get in contact with our community manager. She unfortunately wasn't able to make this call herself, but do you know Aliens? Have you spoken with her yet? Say on the Discord.
No, I haven't. I just, got to know. I was just checking out your page, but I had to come back to like unmute my mic and speak after you gave your answers. So I was just
Sure.
checking out the project in general. I was about entering into the community actually.
Sure. I'll tell you what.
Uh,
I'll DM you right now. I'm just gonna tag our community manager to you in our DMs, and then you can get in contact with her and ask both of those questions about, say, how you can maybe contribute more to our project, and also about the community codes and everything we shared during this call. That's something I'm not personally that aware of either. She just kind of dropped me the code today, told me to share it with our Discord community here, and that they know what to do with it. But I'll let you get in contact with her about that stuff.
So I want to add to that that it's amazing to hear people wanting to contribute, and in the coming days and weeks, we will be revealing more about Charms. Charms is an open source project. You can go to charms.dev website, and you can also have the link in our X profile. So this also provides a link to our GitHub repo. You can read the docs, look at the code. You can contribute issues. Um, you can contribute documentation even. Um, and um, and I'm super grateful for people to for looking into it. Yeah, so super excited on working with all of you.
yeah, that's amazing, man. We are always here to support. The crypto is all about collaboration and support. It's all about community. That's what drives a project in general. So let's go. I'll be keeping in touch and staying as active as I can. Thank you.
All right, thanks a lot for the good questions, Java. We're coming close to our wrap up, but we do have another speaker here ready to ask a question. Crypto Bag Travis. I feel like I've spoken to you before on one of these spaces. What's going on, man? What do you have to ask?
Yeah, I was gonna ask, what's the three main things charms do?
Travis, I couldn't quite hear you there, man.
Yeah,
Could you get a little closer to the mic?
I think the question was, what are the three main things that charms do?
Yeah,
Is that right?
yeah.
Oh man. Well, charms create these magical assets, so which are more magical than the magic internet money itself. Uh, so yeah, charms, basically what charms do is they allow you to create fungible and non-fungible tokens on Bitcoin. Um, these assets are programmable, and that's, I think, the programmable part is the second thing that it does. And the third thing is that these assets are portable. They are easily a portable cross-chain. Well, I can probably add another one. Uh, because these assets are programmable, and apps, they are developed in the programming language. I would say, and a very important thing that charms do is that charms allows programmability in a very developer friendly way. So you don't need to learn an obscure programming language that only one blockchain supports. You program these apps in a general purpose language like Rust, which a lot of developers, which is widely popular, and we are opening our programmability to even wider set of developers via supporting WebAssembly. It is on our roadmap, and we are going to have this year.
Ivan, there are, I'm sure, a million things beyond just three things that Charms is bringing to the table, but I suppose the umbrella ideas under which all of the other applications come from is the programmability and the native cross-chain element. So anybody looking to dig further into Charms, please read our white paper. It's linked above in this space. We've got a couple of threads summarizing that white paper for the people who aren't super technical and just want to get the TLDR. Until then, folks, if you guys want to ask more direct questions about Charms, I suggest you follow myself at Aethervalis and you follow Ivan at iMikushin. And just DM us your questions, reply to our tweets, and we're always happy to reply to you and like be completely transparent about how this technology works. We are living on Twitter. We're loving the attention and the love we're getting over this Charms thing. We're always happy to respond to you. So, guys, this has been a fantastic space. You guys asked great questions. Thank you, CryptoBag Travis. Thank you, Java. Thank you to our other speakers. And yeah, I'm ready to wrap it up, guys. So let me play some outro music for you. And I hope you all have a great weekend. Peace out, bosses.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure.